In the 20th century, hundreds of different kinds of animals have disappeared from the wild. The animals in these stories are all victims of the skin and fur trade. Even today, the diverse clan of grey wolves spans most of the northern hemisphere, but some subspecies have been lost, including one the Japanese called the Howling God. The Japanese wolves lived in the mountains of Kyushu, Shikoku, and Honshu, where they were often regarded as the people's protectors. The Japanese farmed mainly vegetables, and the wolves helped to keep deer and boar off their crops, so they were much better tolerated as neighbors by humans than wolves usually are. The Japanese subspecies was the smallest of all wolves, only 35 centimeters high at the shoulder and a meter long. Its howl, though, was prodigious. It was said in northern Honshu that if you looked at a howling wolf from the front, it seemed as big as a newborn pony. This cub is rather less frightening. No one knows how many wolves there were in Japan before the 19th century. Since they weren't hunted, they were probably quite numerous. The Ainu, the Aboriginal people of Japan, were the ones who named the wolf the Howling God. Its eerie wailing, echoing round the mountain ranges of northern Honshu during the long nights, would have been enough to earn the wolf a healthy awe and respect. In fact, people everywhere have usually been more frightened by wolves than they actually needed to be. People generally believe that the grey wolves of Eurasia and North America are deadly assailants, beasts that humans have to beware of away from civilization. But the fact is that wolves are just not interested in humans as prey. There is no authenticated record of a healthy wild wolf harming a human. And in Japan, at least, there are stories about them helping people. In one, a blind lute player is hopelessly lost on a mountain. A wolf, he believes to be a hunter, leads him to safety. There are still shrines to wolves in the mountains. When the Japanese wolves were portrayed as vicious, it was usually for attacking horses, the one form of livestock widely kept in Japan. Because the Japanese revered and respected wolves, it didn't mean that they didn't hunt them. The Ainu used poisoned arrows, but that was only for subsistence hunting, which seldom harms animals as species. The first real danger to the Japanese wolf was the increase in trapping because of a developing commercial trade in wolf skins. By the 19th century, this business was booming, and for the first time the wolf population began to shrink. There was another cause too. The human population was expanding. Villages were turning into cities. The wolves' forests were gradually being replaced by city outskirts and their supporting farms. Japan, as it moved swiftly towards one of the highest population densities in the world, changed its attitude towards the wolves. To people in the new cities, wolves were frightening pests. By the end of the 19th century, the government was offering bounties on them. The last Japanese wolf was shot in 1905 near Washikaguchi on Honshu. The Japanese wolves disappeared quite simply because of the change in the way of Japanese life. Now the mountains are silent and mysterious, with only the wind as a reminder of those strange, howling gods. This is a Burchels Zebra, named after an English explorer. It belonged to the plains zebra, one of the 3 varieties of zebra. The others were the desert zebra of Ethiopia and the mountain zebra of Angola, Namibia. The plains zebra was the largest group and once ranged on grassland from the Horn of Africa to the Cape. With the exception of the Serengeti herds, all zebra species are now endangered. In 1817, the English traveller Burchell recorded sightings of a form of plains zebra. He was the first to bring plains zebra specimens to Britain. Zebra like these, with their fascinating kaleidoscope of patterned stripes, once occupied the southernmost veldt lands of South Africa. Zebras vary in type from horse-like to donkey-like. Burchell's was considered the most elegant, horse-like zebra of all. It had the temperament to match its thoroughbred looks too, being particularly energetic and aggressive. It had the typical zebra's stout build and stiff mane, but smallish, horse-like ears. Males were much larger and heavier than females, and they measured up to 1.5 meters to the shoulder and 2.5 meters in length. Burchels Zebra had bold, heavy, wraparound striping with several variations. These included reversal of the pattern black on white or white on black. On the South African veldt, zebras formed a triple alliance with ostriches and wildebeest. The wildebeest's power of smell and the bird's sharp eyesight combined well with the zebra's acute hearing. These were a powerful combination for survival. But Boer settlers, with their guns, moved to the Orange Free State and hunted the vast herds for their juicy meat. The hides, being both strong and lightweight, were used for sacks. But the zebra was also utilized in other, more unusual ways. In the 1830s, there was a brief fashion for unusual draft animals, and among the most exotic were the Burchels Zebra. Unfortunately for the Burchels Zebra, men quickly recognized the utility and beauty of their skins, and a large commercial hide market developed. In many cases, hunters found that they could make more money from animal hides than they could from farming. By the 1850s, the newly introduced technology of stripping and tanning hides by chemical processes made them hugely profitable. Mass destruction of these seemingly endless herds of zebra began in the 1840s. The slaughter went on unabated for 30 years, despite the attention of early conservationists. By 1870, all the big herds of Burchels zebras had gone. There were only small groups left in the wild. A few Boer landowners kept captive herds, and some were taken to zoos. The last Burchels zebra died in London Zoo in Regent's Park in 1910. It had spent most of its life in captivity. In such a vast and diverse country as the United States, the Carolina parakeet established a unique niche. In fact, it was perhaps the most successful niche a species could find. It was the only native parrot in North America. Like other parrots, it was playful, mischievous, chirpy, belligerent, and very talkative. Preferring to live in tree hollows, they established large colonies in the densely wooded deciduous forests of eastern North America, filling the treetops with the social chattering so typical of parakeets. Their habitat spanned either side of the Appalachian mountain ridge, which runs down eastern America from north to south. The mountain range created two subspecies of the parakeet. One bird lived to the east of it, and the other to the west. This small, mischievous bird, uniquely among parakeets, had an orange-yellow head with plumage which ranged in color from green to yellow. The temperate forests of eastern North America provided all the seeds and berries needed for the parakeet's diet. But as the land was cleared and turned over to farmland by European settlers, the parakeets soon adapted to easier pickings and became fruit and grain feeders. For the early European settlers, scratching a living from the available land, the parakeet soon became an enemy. The farmers began to keep a careful lookout for them. As the parakeets swept in, they would either snatch fruit and make off with it, or sit in a tree, peck a single fruit and move on to the next. It took only 2 or 3 birds to ruin a whole crop this way. No one was going to tolerate such audacious behavior, and the parakeet was shot on sight as a pest. It was also hunted for sport and food. Parakeet feathers were sought after for hats, and huge markets for them developed in both America and Europe at the end of the 19th century. The bird's popularity increased as they were painted by artists. It also became very fashionable at that time to keep caged birds. Their playful and talkative nature made the Carolina parakeets especially attractive, so they were trapped in their thousands for the pet trade. There was further pressure on the remaining population too, as the once vast temperate forests, home to the parakeets, were transformed into farmland. Unfortunately, little was done to preserve the birds until it was too late. The last wild Carolina parakeet was shot in 1904. However, in 1886, Cincinnati Zoo acquired some Carolina parakeets when they were becoming rare. Unfortunately, unsuccessful captive breeding resulted in only 2 birds remaining by 1917. In that year, the female died, leaving the grieving male increasingly listless. Only a few months later, he also died. Incus, as he was affectionately called at Cincinnati Zoo, was the last of the line of Carolina parakeets. Although the lion is usually called the king of beasts, the tiger is actually the largest and heaviest of the great cats, and by far the fiercest and most dangerous hunter. Of all the tiger species, the Barley tiger was the smallest. Found only in the Indonesian island of Bali, it roamed the island's tropical rainforests, which provided perfect cover for the well-camouflaged tiger. There was also an abundant water supply and plenty of small mammals to prey on. All tiger species can adapt to a wide variety of environments, provided they have the essential vegetation cover, water, and prey. It is a hugely adaptable beast and very successful as a species. Within historic times, its range spread from as far north as Siberia, south through the jungles of China, India, and Malaysia, to the Indonesian islands. However, it has never been able to survive uncontrolled market hunting by man. To the islanders, the small, brightly coloured Barley tiger, with strong white markings, held supernatural powers. Their fear and reverence towards it were reflected in ceremonial masks. Tigers are known to seek humans as their prey, and it was recognized that the Barley tiger could become a man-eater. Although the figures are not entirely accurate, tigers, like these Indian ones, were responsible for killing as many as 1,000 people a year in the 1800s and early 1900s, more than any other land mammal. As the swelling human population pushed into the Barley tiger range, fear for the loss of human lives increased. The tigers were certainly a threat and would not tolerate man's presence. Unarmed, the local people would often fall prey to the tiger, their fear magnified when the grisly tale was reenacted in the village puppet theatre. The Barley Tiger, like this Indian tiger, was truly king of the jungle, until the colonial Europeans arrived with guns. Now the tiger was no longer tolerated. Seen as a man-eating pest, it was persecuted without mercy, and uncontrolled hunting by both Dutch colonials and local people became rife. Tiger hunting became fashionable. The excuse of eradicating a major predator was soon matched by the rise of the skin and trophy market. Like these tigers hunted in India, the beautiful Barley tiger skin proved irresistible to the discerning European. Nor could the Barley tiger resist the ever-increasing market for tiger parts in Taiwan. This modern trade had put them beyond salvation. Of the 8 subspecies of tiger, there are now only 5. The remaining populations are all endangered. It is feared that the last wild tigers of the world will be gone by the year 2000. What we know for sure is that the Barley tiger has already gone. The last population of Barley tigers lived in the western forests of the island. There, the last tiger was shot at Sumba, Kima on the 27th of September, 1937. Jaguars are the only member of the big cat family found anywhere in the American continent, and the Arizona jaguar was the largest of them all. It was also the most northerly. Unlike its cousins, which lived in the dense, damp forests of South America, the Arizona jaguar inhabited the drier and more rocky scrubland of what became the southern United States. Living in this more open habitat, it was more sandy in color than, for instance, this jaguar from Belize. It was also about half a meter larger, at nearly 2.5 meters in length, weighing 150 kilos. Jaguars are often regarded as similar to the leopards of Africa, although their intricate patterning is more like a series of dark rosettes than the leopard's more simple spots. Their heads are also more rounded, and their bodies have a more deep-chested barrel shape with short but massively strong limbs. With such legs, the Arizona jaguars could run fast and climb well. They made their dens in caves or canyons, or even, as was once recorded, the ruins of a human home. Solitary creatures, they hunted at night, stalking on the ground and never straying more than 30 kilometers from home, which was normally close to water. All jaguars like a diet of fish, although in the arid deserts of Arizona, they were harder to find. The Native American Indian tribes feared and revered the Arizona jaguar, regarding these large predators as part of the natural order of the world, no more or less than they themselves were. At the beginning of the 19th century, a description of the Arizona jaguar's range was written by J. Audubon, the famous American naturalist. He suggested they were common right across the southern states. At the same time, however, the white man was stretching his own range across the same territory. For many species, the human invasion spelt disaster, but unusually for the Arizona jaguar, it meant a banquet. The British, French, and Dutch settlers brought cows and sheep, so the jaguars suddenly found their prey had doubled in both size and quantity. They thrived, but not for long. The farmers decided to put a stop to the free feast and started to hunt the jaguar. With guns and dogs, they tracked them. And when the hunters caught up with a jaguar, it was easy to corner it against a rock or up a tree. After that, it was simple target practice to shoot them dead. Sometimes the hunters put out poisoned meat or laid traps. Whichever, the jaguars had never been hunted before, and so they didn't use attack as a form of defense. Unfortunately, there was more than one reason for killing the Arizona jaguar. Wealthy ladies desired coats and jackets made from the huge and beautiful skins. But the coats never looked as good on the rich as on the animals that wore them first. The fur trade cleaned up where the farmers left off. In 1904, in the Sierra de los Cabales in New Mexico, an Arizona jaguar was seen and shot dead. Another was seen the following year, and it too suffered the same fate. But then, no more. The power of human progress marched onward, and human vanity found other skins to parade. Gone forever was the natural power and beauty of the Arizona jaguar. Elks are the giants of the red deer family, and the largest elk of all was the Mesas Wapiti. Once they numbered as many as 10 million, but neither size nor quantity were enough to save them. And indeed, they were truly huge. Larger even than these Roosevelt's elk, they weighed up to 450 kilos, stood 1.8 meters to the shoulder, and nearly 3 meters head to tail. But despite their size, the Mesas Wapiti were stately, graceful beasts. The male wore a 6-pointed crown of antlers, which measured as much as 1.2 meters across. Elks once ranged across the whole of North America. The Mesas Wapiti were the most southerly, living in the harsh desert scrub of Arizona and northern Mexico. They grazed on the lowland plains along with the buffalo, in the hunting grounds of the Native American Indians, and they varied in color from dark reddish-brown to light fawn in summer. During the mating season, males fought to protect their harem of females from other bulls, but were solitary creatures for most of the year. Mating began in August, when the bulls began to bray like donkeys to attract females. But by December, they had shed their antlers, and they returned to lonely wandering. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, the Aztec emperor Montezuma displayed the Wapiti's antlers. The newcomers could not believe any deer could be so large. But in 1540, the Spanish explorer Coronado, the first white man to reach the Grand Canyon, saw the Wapiti for himself. It was their shiny coats that gave them their name, which means white deer in the Shawnee Indian language. Like the buffalo, the Native Americans hunted them for meat, but more particularly for their soft hide. However, unlike the buffalo, their hunting was already affecting numbers drastically. This was because they used the cruel but effective method of forming a cordon and chasing a whole terrified herd over a cliff edge. But worse was to come. Better armed hunters arrived as the Spanish, French, Dutch, and British colonized the region throughout the 19th century. There was no need to chase the herd when you had the speed of a bullet. The same was happening to the buffalo, and as their numbers dropped, unemployed hunters switched to the Wapiti. For them, there were trophies other than the hide to collect. A strange brotherhood, known as the Order of Elks, used the Wapiti's canine teeth to make watch fobs in which they carried their watches. But from each corpse, they could only collect a few teeth, and lodge membership was growing fast. The Order of Elks revered the Wapiti as a totem, and yet it was their own fad which finished them off. Prices rose as the creatures became rarer and rocketed when they were granted legal protection in 1870. That only served to spur on the hunters. The last known herd of Mesas Wapiti, little more than a family group, was spotted in 1906. The sighting was made by a hunting party. They killed them on sight.